Welcome to the Fit 40 podcast, where we take all the confusing, conflicting fitness and nutrition information and break it down so that you can live your healthiest, strongest, most energized life. I'm your host, Brian Fitzsimmons. Let's get it started. Hello and welcome back for another fun-filled episode of the Fit 40 podcast. Thank you for tuning in and thank everybody in the Facebook group who is on right now listening in live. Thank you guys for joining me. Today we're going to be talking about how to lower cholesterol without the help of medication. Now, reason that I chose this topic is because I am now 30. My birthday was yesterday, and to cap that off, the 30 years of being here, I thought, what better time to get my annual physical, which happened a few days prior. And turns out that I have borderline high cholesterol. Now, for anybody who's not familiar with what the contributing factors are, a lot of times it is a genetic thing. Like for me in particular, my family genetically is not the best when it comes to cholesterol. Mom, aunts, grandparents, they all had high cholesterol, and that plays a gigantic role. But there are other things that we're going to talk about today that do contribute, that you have all the control over as far as trying to improve your health and make sure that you're here for a long time for your friends, for your family. So let's get into what actually causes this issue. When it comes to cholesterol, there's two main types. There's the HDL and the LDL. HDL is the good stuff, the high density lipoproteins that are good. They help lower LDL cholesterol, which is the not so great. And yeah, that can be found in a bunch of different sources of food, which is why when you see cholesterol on the label, dietary cholesterol does not necessarily contribute to poor cholesterol in your blood markers, specifically that HDL, because if you are getting cholesterol in your diet, a lot of times on those labels, you don't know which kind. You got to really know what the ingredients are and all that. So just saying, oh, go low on cholesterol isn't exactly a great idea, because you could be missing out on stuff that could be helping you. But then the LDL cholesterol is what we want to focus on. LDL, low density lipoproteins, that's the stuff that can clog up your arteries and all that stuff. And I apologize ahead of time because I'm really trying to simplify this, and I can feel my girlfriend cringing because she's the internal medicine doctor. So this is probably going to drive her nuts, but I'll do my best to keep it simple so that we can take some actionable steps going forward. Now, for me personally, I know the reason I am 90% sure the reason for this is because of the genetics, number one, and two, because I've been actively trying to gain muscle by going into a calorie surplus, which has resulted in gaining 15 to 20 pounds over the last 6 months. Now, having a body weight that is higher and having body fat levels that are higher can contribute to a less favorable cholesterol ratio number, all that good stuff. So hence the reason I will be jumping into a fat loss phase. And now that I've done a good job putting on a solid amount of muscle, now I'm going to lean back down and go from there, which is why the next podcast episode is going to be all about how to set yourself up for a diet phase. Okay, so I'll take you through all of the stuff next time that I'll be doing to make sure that the body fat comes off, muscle stays on, and it'll be a much better place health-wise, hopefully. So that's a big one. Another thing for a lot of people is the lack of exercise. Now, for me, not an issue. I've solidified that habit. It stays. I'm good on that front. Smoking, not a smoker, so that's always good. But if you are a smoker, that does really affect your cholesterol. And then booze intake, which definitely has been more so than normal because of the holidays. So we'll get back to the usual. I don't drink a ton. So yeah. My big focuses personally are going to be the losing weight and also adding in fiber, which is the big thing, which is your food choices. Okay, and we're going to go over that in detail. So let's start off with that being the primary focus, because when I got the call, it was pretty much, hey, just wanted to let you know you have borderline high cholesterol. I would recommend dietary changes, increasing activity and stuff like that. And I'm like, cool, great. And I personally, being a fitness professional, know the nutritional strategies that are going to have to happen for that to improve over time. But if that was just an average person, it's kind of like, thanks. what do I do? So we'll go over that. So when it comes to the nutritional side, first and foremost, we want to focus on incorporating healthy foods. And one way to go about this is focusing on things like saturated fat. When it comes to saturated fat, you only want at the max like 10% of your calories to come from saturated fat. So for example, let's say for me personally, I got to do 2,000 calories a day for my fat loss phase. So 2,000 calories would mean 200 calories of that would be the limit for saturated fat. I'm all over the place. Saturated fat should be about 200 calories of that 2,000 calories. That being said, fat is 9 calories per gram. So you divide that 200 by 9, and I'm using my phone for the Facebook Live, so I can't do that off the top of my head, but it ends up being somewhere around the ballpark of like 17 to 20 grams of saturated fat in my day. So for everybody listening, like that is not a lot of saturated fat. Like you can easily, like if you're pounding the ice cream or bacon or like very high fat meats, you could knock that out in one meal or double it in one meal. So taking account of how much saturated fat is in the food that you're eating can improve your food decisions a lot and improve your health markers a lot. The other thing is eliminating trans fats, which luckily there has been legislation in the past few years that has made it harder for restaurants to incorporate trans fats, because back in the day, McDonald's, Burger King, all those big chain restaurants, they were notorious for using a ton of trans fats. Now it's like the new virtue signal of like, we have no trans fats. We're looking out for your health. They're not. So, I mean, it did play into our favor as the public because now it's one less thing to worry about. But that being said, the FDA, like they don't require the labels to mark that there are trans fats in there if it's like less than a gram per serving. So if you're getting like 0.5 grams of trans fat, but there's 20 servings in whatever you're eating and you eat the entire thing, that's 10 grams of trans fat right there. So something to keep in mind when you're picking out which foods that you're going to be eating. Another thing that we can incorporate is eating more omega-3s, omega-3 fatty acids. This is usually when you see like the fish oil pills, like this is what that is. And you can get omega-3s in a bunch of different ways, but the main source is like the fatty fish and those fish oils. And when it does come to the fish oils, we want to find a fish oil that is high quality. And the way that you can tell if a fish oil is high quality is the DHA to EPA ratio. Now, those are the two big things in it. There's a couple other things in there, but those are the two you want to pay attention to when it comes to the ratio. Ideally, 1-to-1 would be great, but it's cheaper to get more EPA in your fish oils. So the ones that have a higher DHA concentration are going to be a little bit more expensive. That being said, it's one of those things where it's like, when it comes down to it, like when cholesterol comes into play, like, and we're really trying to do everything and anything to get it down, the cost of fish oil really beats out the alternative of your cholesterol causing health problems down the line. That is one of those investments that will pay off 100-fold. And then next is increasing soluble fiber. Now, when it comes to fiber, there's two types. There's soluble and insoluble. Soluble is the kind that softens your stool and makes it a whole lot easier to travel through. The insoluble is kind of like the snow plow, where it just like pushes everything along in your GI tract and keeps everything moving. But the soluble helps a ton with softening it up, and it can put that cholesterol to use. It can bind to the cholesterol and actually make it work for you in your body so it doesn't just accumulate and cause problems. Where you can get that from, one of the best sources is skin on things like fruits and veggies. Now, that would require us to eat more fruits and veggies, which a lot of us are not very good at, myself included. So going in on things like apples, grapes, I'm just going off the top of my head here. Yeah, those are like the two for me that I always gravitate towards, but there are tons out there. And if you just do a simple search on Google, let's say soluble fiber foods, you'll find a ton. Then when it comes to, last but not least, is whey protein. believe it or not, there is another reason why you should drink or consume more protein. And that is because whey protein definitely helps a ton as far as like meeting your protein requirements. And then when you meet your protein requirements, it does help build lean muscle tissue. And when you're leaner and a more favorable body composition, that gets back to the losing weight part. When you actually have a better body composition, it helps your health markers. That's the way it is. Your body likes to be at a certain level with body fat and other things like that, and it operates at its best. So yeah, there you go. There's probably more to it with the whey protein. I just did not have the time to look into it before doing this episode. So I will be doing more research into that. And you can bet your ass that the next few posts as far as social media go are going to be related to this topic. Next, so once we've covered food, next is exercise. When it comes to exercise, you don't have to go crazy about it. It doesn't need to be this grueling effort where you're going day in, day out, busting your ass, full of sweat, like doing like a body pump or a CrossFit class every single day, wearing yourself down to the bone, because that is like robbing Peter to pay Paul. Will you build muscle and lose body fat and all that? Probably, but your hormonal profile is going to take a hit. When you stress yourself out beyond belief, your hormones react in accordance with that, and they do not like it. So definitely want to exercise properly. Now, I would set the bar at about 2 to 4 days of resistance training per week. That doesn't need to be grueling. It doesn't need to be like some gigantic, like Herculean effort. It's just go in there, do one thing where you're pushing, one thing where you're pulling, one thing where you're squatting, one thing where you're hinging, and a core exercise. That's 5 things. Okay, if you're just a beginner, only do 1 of everything, and then the next week do 2 of everything, then the next week do 3 of everything, and then stop at the 3 and just try and add weight as you go. Now, if you are an experienced person, sometimes, like let's say you're the type of person that is the person that kills themselves every time they hit the gym, really sweating up a storm and everything like that, sometimes it can help to decrease the amount that you are doing in a way that is favorable to your body. Like put yourself at like a level of workouts where you have a ton of energy, more so than you do now, where your mood is better, where you're not like, you don't feel like you're ready to rip everybody's heads off every time you have a conversation. Just little things like that, like where you kind of have an idea. And also another thing, like if you are no longer hungry or as hungry after those workouts or during the day, these are like little markers, like they're called SHMEC, where it's kind of like a shorthanded way of keeping track of your hormonal health. And that's sleep, mood, hunger, energy, cravings. Yeah. So yeah, if any of those are out of whack, that could be a sign that you're overdoing it. But most people that do have these cholesterol issues more so are on the other end of the spectrum where you need to increase activity. So 2 to 4 days, nothing crazy. And steps. Steps are a huge one that a lot of people just don't put a whole lot of value in because it's like, oh, how much could it actually be doing? But steps are huge. Steps have a ton of benefits. So doing like 5K at least a day would get you into from that lower threshold into a good one, because anything lower than 5K is considered low activity. So when we get out of that, it's good. And that's when you can start feeling the health benefits, like the cardiac benefits and things like that. And then from there, you could take it further. Like a lot of what I'm going off of right now are recommendations from like the Mayo Clinic. And what they recommend when it comes to like aerobic training, which is the cardio stuff, is like I think they said 3 20-minute sessions or 2 30-minute sessions per week of medium-paced aerobic exercise. So that is something to strive for, but it's something that not everybody can do just yet. So starting point for a lot of people, get like 2 days in the gym, hit a little bit of everything, 1 to 3 sets, and get 5K steps a day. Best thing to do with the steps is get a tracker or like look at your phone. Pretty much every phone tracks it right now, and incorporate little habits throughout the day. Don't feel like you have to like go on an hour-long walk every single day. You don't have to. So let's say all you do right now is get up, go to work, come home, sit on the couch. You're still probably between bathroom breaks, getting to work, walking around a little bit, you're probably still getting around 1,000, 2,000 steps throughout the day. But let's say you add in like for your meals, every time you have a meal, you do a 10-minute walk or a 5-minute walk. That's like 15 to 30 minutes added on. That's 3,000 steps right there. You are now in the 5K group. Or let's say you have to get groceries after work or go to the store to get clothes or something like that. Just walking around the store, like back and forth, that could be 1,000, 2,000, maybe even 3,000 steps, depending on how much you are shopping. So stuff like that adds up, and it can make a big difference as far as health goes. Next is quitting smoking, and this is a tough one. It really is, because, I mean, unfortunately, a lot of people just grew up in that era where they didn't know any better, and the tobacco industry and the US government did not do anything to stop it. If anything, they pushed it along because, hey, money, right? So unfortunately, there's a gigantic generation of people that got screwed, and they need to find a way to kick the habit. So going to your doctor, like talking about the different options, like whether it's patches, gum, or like other things like that, can help. But a lot of times when it comes to like addiction, one of the things that you see a lot of people that have had successful transitions from beating the addiction is transferring that addictive style towards something beneficial. You see it a lot of times like with people who like got past drugs and now they go all in on exercise to the point where it might even be detrimental. But the downside of exercise is way better. Like going too all in on exercise is way better than going the other route. So when it comes to smoking, if you can adjust those habits, like a lot of times with smoking, it's tied to these things like when you're driving or when you're having your cup of coffee or when you're stressed and different things like that. And it's like, it's not necessarily that you're just smoking for no reason. It's these triggers or these things that really get you to be like, oh, I need my cigarette with this. If you can figure out a way to pair something else with it. So let's say we'll take the driving, for example. Let's say it's really, really tough to not get that smoke in. One of the things you can do is make sure that they are not in the car. So make sure that you don't have that pack of cigarettes anywhere in the car, in your pocket, arm's length away. That's one of the easiest things you can do. And then substitute that with something that occupies your hand and your mouth. One thing could be like your coffee, yeah, but maybe like a protein shake or a bar, just something to orally stimulate you and be like, all right, I'm not smoking, but my mouth is doing something, like eating a protein bar or something like that. Now, this is wishful thinking for a lot of people. It can be tough. It's not that simple, but it's just some ideas. Or let's say, like, when you're stressed, you immediately go to get a pack of cigarettes. That could be a really good topic to go to a therapist with, like going to a therapist for behavioral change modifications and things like that, where they can get to the root of the problem, like where this stress comes from, why the cigarette's the first one to go to. So could be a matter of like seeking professional help too. Next is losing weight. We know I've covered this at length. If you need more info, don't worry. The next lesson I'll be doing is going to be all about how to set yourself up for a fat loss phase. So if you're listening to this right now and you want to get started today, easiest thing to do is get those calories in check. Like that's the first thing that we got to do, is make sure that the calories are satisfying a like need, like a, I don't know where I was going with that as far as words go, but put yourself in a calorie deficit. And the way that you do that is you take your goal body weight and you multiply it by 10 to 12. So for me, say I want to, like I'm at 225 right now, say I want to get to 200 pounds, I would do that 200 times 10, 2,000 calories. And then I also multiply it by 12, which would get me to 2,400. So now I got a nice little range in there where it's like I have some buffer room. On the days I'm not so hungry, I'll shift towards the 2,000. On the days where I'm really hungry and I need a little extra, I'll go towards the 2,400. Either way, on either end of that spectrum, I'm still going to be losing weight overall. So that can help a ton for the people that want to get started today. And if you're listening back to this, just check out the next episode. I promise I'll cover it in detail. And last but not least is limiting booze. This is tough. I sympathize with people that like really, really like it's a part of their week. It's a part of their day, because I came from I will say it is the number one party school in the entire world. Like at that time especially, and prior, I went to West Virginia. It's a party school. Alcohol is part of the culture. And for a lot of people, alcohol is part of their lifestyle right now. And it's very, very tough to get rid of it. But same concepts apply with the quitting smoking, is find different ways to circumvent that and get it out of the equation. For me, I know personally, I went from basically every single time I would be drinking, I would go way past the limit to where I was way too much. Like I was way over the line as far as how many drinks to have. So what I would do, instead of doing that 3, 4, 5 times a night, I just do it in one. And then that one night I would go overboard and be like, okay, I don't like this either. So taking that craziness from the one night and shifting more towards, maybe I'll do this once every other week. And when I do it, I'm going to go and ride the buzz. I'm not going to like go overboard. I'm not going to consume as much as I possibly can. Like I'm never going to drink ever again, but I'm going to ride that buzz and enjoy it. That's one way that worked for me. I know a lot of people like have issues when it comes to like work parties, or their friend group is just very heavy on going out and getting drinks and hitting happy hour and all that. It can be very, very challenging. And sometimes it does come down to limiting exposure to those types of people. Like if you have an out when it comes to your friend group asking, hey, want to go get drinks for the 3rd time this week? Come up with some other thing like, oh, sorry, I got to catch my exercise class, or sorry, I got a date with the hubby. I'm going to be with them. Something like that can help a ton. Just finding ways to not make an excuse, but just limit your exposure to people that put you in situations you no longer want to be in. Let me think. Are there any others? And when it comes to like the social situations, one thing that did help a lot, like when I was in college and I was actually trying to diet down, very hard thing to do in college, but other than starving yourself, which I did see a lot of people do, which worked, but that works in your 20s, not your 40s or 50s. One thing that worked for me was getting like seltzer-based drinks, because people can't really tell you're drinking or not. And there isn't that, come on, live a little, because they're looking at your cup thinking, oh, they're drinking. So seltzer-based drinks, or like just mixer drinks in general, help a ton. But the seltzers usually are the low cal or 0 cal ones. Those are the best ones to go for. Getting like a little like dash of something like OJ or Sprite or something like that can help a ton too. Or Diet Coke. I always went with the Diet Coke because I'll be like, oh, I'm having a rum and Coke, and people really didn't look at me twice for it. So yeah, those were the ones that worked. So that is pretty much it when it comes to lowering cholesterol. Just to recap, we want to make healthy food decisions. We want to get some exercise in throughout the week. If you're smoking, find a way to quit. If you're at a body weight that is too heavy, so I would say if we're in that overweight to possibly obese category when it comes to BMI, probably a good idea to lose a little bit of weight, and then limit booze. So those are the big 5. I know there's more, but those are the big ones. If you guys have any questions as far as this stuff is concerned, I know personally I will be diving deep in the coming weeks to try and learn more and more and more. But this is all I got for now. So if you need a little more help with like getting the exercise going or anything like that, feel free to reach out and I'd be happy to help. Until next time, go kick some ass. I'll see you soon. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode and you're a new listener, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss another episode. And if you're a returning listener, I would love your feedback. If you could take 2 seconds to just leave a quick review on iTunes or Spotify and rate the show, that would be greatly appreciated. So thank you in advance and have a great rest of your